Thank you, Acting President. I rise to speak on the Transport Legislation Amendment Bill 2023. This bill delivers several reforms to our transport legislation, from technical amendments that improve the effectiveness of our transport legislation to introducing the legislative framework to begin researching technology to facilitate reforming certain safety parameters. I want to begin by noting that I care deeply about the transport industry. In fact, I'm from the industry. I started from the shop floor more than 3 decades ago, in fact, and I got my first start as a baggage handler 37 years ago. I spent 11 years at Ansett Australia. It was a great time, and I met some great people there, some such as the Captain Bill and Dino. The transport industry has a lot of heart and a lot of good, and it's keeping our state running. Acting President, I have a keen interest in legislation that affects our transport system, legislation that ensures that our transport network is effective and safe. We all have a responsibility in this place to act diligently to ensure that the laws that we make here protect workers. That's why today I want to discuss the reforms that we're proposing in that spirit. This bill will enable research and subsequent trials to support the investigation of evidence-based road safety policies, specifically regarding medicinal cannabis and medicinal cannabis testing. We've come a long way since backward thinking of the war on drugs. We're a modern state. Acting President, I recognise that this place has 2 democratically elected members of the Legalised Cannabis Party, 2 members, Mr Eddershank and Ms Payne, who are dedicated to legalising cannabis, and we know that. But to also educate and bring light to many issues facing our state, ideas that I'd never considered before in my life. For instance, I've sat down in this chamber during many contributions in Parliament and have learned a lot about the hemp industry. I've also learned about hemp through my participation as a member of the Economy and Infrastructure Committee, in particular the investigation into the hemp industry. Earlier this year we discussed a similar bill from legalised cannabis that was introduced by my colleague Mr Eddershank, the Road Safety Amendment Medical Cannabis Bill 2023. And during that conversation we undertook to conduct more research into the area. And Minister Xing said at the time, and I quote, this is really a complex area. Careful thought and consideration of this issue has been undertaken for some time now, and it is also necessary and appropriate that that work continue. And we want to put to good use in a conversation about public health, about access to treatment, and about making and keeping our road environment safe. And that is what we have done, and we will continue to do. This legislation will support a world-leading trial that assesses the effects of medicinal cannabis on the road and driving behaviour. As announced last month, we'll be running a closed circuit trial to investigate when individuals who use medicinal cannabis, which contains THC, can drive safely. This is an important next step, and it's important for me personally. I know Ms Payne and Mr Eddershank, who spent a lot of life in industrial relations all around our country, from training in industrial officer roles, who was on the waterfront in 1998, someone who has worked for the ACTU, the ASU and United Voice, including with my friend Senator Tony Sheldon in Queensland. I know Mr Eddershank cares about workers' safety. That's why it's important that we conduct this trial and get it right, so that we can look forward towards the day when people who are using medicinal cannabis for their health can participate in our society fully as members equally by using our roads. The trial will be developed and implemented by an independent research organisation with the Department of Transport and Planning, roads safety partners, experts and health professionals overseeing it from the governance of logistical perspective. Comprehensive design work will create a controlled driving environment for the trial. It will be physically separated from public roads, and there will be important safety considerations for workers, in this case the research staff and the participants. This bill will also establish a state-level legislative framework for local city and shire councils to manage vehicle sharing schemes, specifically the issues that they present in relation to amenity and accessibility. Additionally, the bill will update and clarify the Road Safety Act to provide improved road safety outcomes for all Victorians, and it will support the reform and reorganisation of our transport sector agencies and regulation schemes, in addition to reforms with the intention of establishing a more efficient transport sector administration and regulation. The bill will amend the following acts: the Bus Safety Act 2009, the Commercial Passenger Vehicle Industry Act 2017, the Marine Domestic Commercial Vessels National Law Applications Act 2013, the Road Management Act 2004, the Road Safety Act 1986, the Sentencing Act 1991, Transport Action Act 1986, Transport Compliance and Miscellaneous Act 1983, and the Transport Integration Act 2010. Acting President, 7 years ago, the then Andrews Labor government, this side of the chamber, made history by being the first government in Australia to legalise prescription-based use of medical cannabis. Medical cannabis is the net positive for our state. It is playing an increasing role as a therapeutic option, with a documented increase of more than 700% in the number of patients that are prescribed medical cannabis in our state in just the last 2 years. We did it because we listened to health experts, and with this legislation, we're listening to experts again. Users of medical cannabis almost uniformly report positive outcomes for taking medicinal cannabis for a range of conditions, from anxiety to treating side effects of chemo. However, many medical cannabis users face major issues due to cannabinoids' ability to stay in the bloodstream for long periods of time after consuming cannabis. Medicinal cannabis users are unable to use their vehicles without the fear of returning a positive on a blood test for the presence of drugs. If we can develop technology to measure the level of cannabis in their system, then drivers who use medicinal cannabis can return to the roads without fear of penalisation. This will be done by giving powers to the Minister for Roads and Road Safety, Minister Horn, in the other place, to establish this road safety research trial. We don't know what we don't know, and this trial will show us how to get to the place where we want to know more. These research trials will not stop just at medicinal cannabis impairment, but address several other road safety-related trials. These trials will be flexible and adaptive. They'll study the effectiveness of the range of policy programs and technologies. This will ultimately leave the Minister for Roads and Road Safety with a library of information on how to best legislate reform that delivers the best outcome for all Victorians. Evidence-based reform is the best way to move Victoria forward in key areas that affect our lives. This power will be delivered through an amendment to the Road Safety Act 1986, along with several other provisions to allow for the trial to be performed with the utmost ease. The bill will also find a solution for a problem that many city councils have been facing as we change the ways that people move around this great city, that being the issue that vehicle sharing schemes pose to amenity and accessibility. In our inner city suburbs, e-scooters and electric bikes are now a familiar part of the landscape. This mode of transport offers a viable and green alternative to commuting or travelling by cars. Their adoption has been widely popular, with the average day in Victoria seeing 8,600 trips made with e-scooters. E-scooters are effective in helping Melbourne get around town cheaply and sustainably when public transport isn't an option. And Acting President, I like them a lot. I remember fondly at my time at the TW National Council in the Northern Territory, scootering around the city on an electric Neuro bike. They're effective and cheap. They also help ease traffic congestion on our roads, an issue that many transport workers face on the job, and a very frustrating one. However, the introduction of e-scooters and electric bikes has created an issue surrounding accessibility of public areas, and we're going to address this through reforms that deliver a legal framework for local councils that address the negative effects of vehicle sharing schemes. With this model, local councils can best determine what their local community need and create bylaws to that effect. This means that we can avoid statewide policies that, despite working well in the city of Yarra or Melbourne, is not effective and counterproductive in a city like that of Boroondara in my community of Southern Metro. This will be implemented through amendments made to the Road Safety Act 1986, specifically introducing Part 7C, which outlines the legal requisites for operating a vehicle sharing scheme, the powers local councils have in the authorisation process for vehicle sharing schemes. It outlines the penalties for failing to abide by the rules set out by the relevant local councils. This is an important step forward towards promoting accessibility in our inner city suburbs while maintaining the benefits we get from these vehicle sharing schemes. The bill also addresses inefficiencies in the organisation and function of Victoria's network of transport sector administration and regulation bodies. This will overall improve the function of transport bodies in the state of Victoria. It will align regulatory schemes and bring the standard of Victoria's transport sector industry up to the best practice. And now onto transport restructuring orders, or TROs. TROs can be used to create new sector transport agencies, alter the constitution and membership of transport agencies, and modify the application of transport legislation. Yet governments cannot abolish transport agencies using the TRO. This can lead to a bloated administration and government. This bill seeks to rectify and gives the government the power to abolish transport agencies. This will make our transport sector more flexible. Many reforms that have changed the face of not just Victoria public transport but Victorian life in general have been achieved through the implementation of Transport Restructuring Order. For example, 2 years ago, a Transport Restructuring Order facilitated the restructuring of V-Line, converting it from a corporation with a board to a single-member corporation. As a result, we could include V-Line projects in our big bill project and so much more. It only makes sense that we should empower the government to slim down government and make it more efficient. Additionally, the bill seeks to provide more transparency on how and why information is shared in the transport industry. This update to information sharing will be introduced to ensure the public have the confidence in how and why information is being shared in the public sector. Information that has been shared to make our system run efficiently, particularly in the public transport system. This can range from the use of closed-circuit cameras to trip information retained by MyKey use. Currently, the power to use this information is with the Minister. This bill seeks to extend the situation, and agencies can assess such information and restructuring the Minister's involvement in the information sharing process. Additionally, updates to legislation will be made to allow for the State Revenue Office to access certain information relating to the Commercial Passenger Vehicle Service Levy through Safe Transport Victoria. This is to ensure that the state revenue schemes are applied evenly across commercial passenger vehicles. Whilst this provision exists in some part already, this bill clarifies the explicit power of the Safe Transport Victoria to share commercially sensitive trip data with the State Revenue Office. Again, this is to ensure the function and efficacy of the Commercial Passenger Vehicle Service Levy. One of the aspects of the bill that I take a lot of interest is in the relation to bus driver accreditation, and I work very closely with the public transport industry in Victoria, specifically our amazing workforce of bus drivers. During that time, I was lucky enough to speak to many bus drivers across Victoria and listen to what they needed to improve their working conditions and then deliver for them. It was the work from the bus drivers and the Transport Workers Union that resulted in all Victorian buses requiring a safety screen for the protection of the driver. I'm glad that I'm still able to advocate for transport workers, but now from Spring Street, and I will continue that today. So I'm proud that this bill will improve the working conditions of our public transport bus drivers. The bill adjusts bus driver accreditation requirements to be fit for purpose and modern, facilitating a smooth transport system. A similar reform was delivered 6 years ago when we modernised the Commercial Passenger Vehicle Accreditation scheme. This bill seeks to bring Victorian bus accreditation into the future and in line with the Commercial Passengers Vehicle Regulation. Acting President, Victoria has a history to be proud of. We've led the nation for over 50 years in life-saving road safety policies. In 1970, for instance, we led the world to become the first jurisdiction to introduce mandatory seat belts. In 1976, we were the first state to introduce random breath testing. In the late 1980s, Victoria again led the world leader by introducing speed cameras. In 2004, Victoria was the first state to introduce mandatory roadside drug testing, and in 2008 we introduced its graduated licensing system. And these initiatives have been found time and time again to have saved countless Victorian lives. This strong record has continued this year with a suite of reforms under the Allen Labor government targeting driver distraction and seatbelt wearing offences. And further road safety programs have been established because of this bill. We'll get on with it and deliver. I recognise the considerable interest in this bill, so I'm looking forward to hearing from my community about how we can deliver the best outcome. That's something that we all should be excited about, because as Minister Horne said, the new laws will enhance our understanding of how medicinal cannabis affects driving behaviour in informing future reform. So let's get it done.